One of the most challenging times for parents and caregivers is when a child transitions from primary to high school. Today I have Kim from Parent Line, and she's going to just have a bit of a chat about how this is such a challenging time. So, what are some of the things that you can think about? What can really help a parent through
Well,
this
it is
transition?
challenging, but it's also super exciting. So I like to kind of look at it from a few different angles when we talk about transition. And it's one of my favorite periods of time in a young person's life, in a parent's life, in adolescence as well. So we really kind of want to break it down because there's a few different things that are going on at this period in that child's life, that young person's life, and we want to be aware of all of them. So first things first, the obvious elephant in the room is it's a literal transition. A child is transitioning from primary school into high school. And just like any kind of transition like if you have a parent that is starting a new job, you've got a new location, most times it's a lot bigger. There's different kids going there. There's a lot of kind of things, a lot of new things that are coming directly towards the young person or child at that point
and
in
it's
time.
going to be different for each child, isn't it? Some children are going to go to totally new schools that they know no one.
Exactly.
Others will be with their peers that they've already known through primary school.
Yeah, exactly. And we know that when we start anything new, there is that mixture of nerves and anxiety and fear of the unknown, but also the excitement around starting something new as well. So we want to talk a little bit about just the basics in terms of how we can prepare and support our kids when they start something new, something big. We also kind of want to look at the fact that there's a lot of other things going on for a young person, coincidentally, at the exact same point of time. The young person not only is transitioning into school, they're also transitioning into adolescence as well. So we want to take that into consideration when we talk about this transition period as well. And a really big thing that we don't tend to talk about a lot, but I'd love to talk about today, is it's a big transition for a parent. It's a huge transition for a parent. There's a lot going on for the parent in that moment as well. There is anxiety around not really knowing how best to support our kids. There's anxiety around not knowing where we really fit into the dynamic of our child starting something new. And we want to kind of raise up some questions for the parents that are watching this today because we want them to ask the questions around their child. They know their child. And we want to be able to help that parent, if they don't know the answers to some of these questions, how they can ask the right questions and communicate with their child and support their child so they get to know what's potentially going on for them as well. And then on top of that, we're going to break down what's potentially going on for the parent and how they can ask themselves some questions and figure out how they're actually feeling about the whole transition process as well.
So when we're sort of considering some of those practical things, we also, I suppose, have to be mindful of where the child is and their independence, because quite often in primary school, they're going to after school care and then all of a sudden, though, that kind of care is not available. So we, as parents, we need to sort of trust our child that their independence is going to be a little bit higher than what it was in the primary years.
It is, and it should be. Like it should be regardless. We're looking at the fact that a child is, like you said, going up into that high school area. But if we take away the specifics of the school scenario, the age of the child that at that point in time in their life when they will be transitioning to high school would be looking at that kind of supportive independence regardless. So this is just another way that we can do it at that point in time. I think first things first, it's really, and you mentioned it earlier, it's when we even when we're kind of looking at how to make the right decision for what schools what school is going to be best for our family as well. And there's a heap of things that we want to consider at that point in time. And as a parent, we want to have knowledge and we want to be able to research our local schools. It's about looking at what fits well for your family. So we want to kind of prepare ourselves to be in the best position in the first place when we support our kids in making this transition and thinking about it from a family perspective. What works best for your family? We want to kind of look at the fit of the school. Does the school fit with your family's philosophy? Does the location suit the family? Like you said earlier, we don't have the option of before and after school care anymore. Does it fit within how we get our kids to school and from school? We also kind of want, like, kids are going to want to look at that social stuff as well. You mentioned it earlier, where are their friends going? It's going to be important to them that they have that maintain of relationships, but unfortunately it's not always the case. But these are things that we want to kind of think of from the get-go, because we want to make sure that we're kind of setting ourselves up to have the best fit from the get-go.
Yeah.
Before we even start to kind of look into the next kind of level of issues that might arise when we're transitioning into high school.
And I suppose it's looking at that support systems for not only the child but also the parent to reduce some of that anxiety a parent might have.
Absolutely.
About, letting them walk to school or having to catch a train, a bus for the first time by themselves, and maybe trying to create that little group for them and to have someone, a peer group to go with.
I think it's important that we kind of take advantage of the opportunities that we have to get to know the school before as well. So looking at when open days are, looking at when orientation days are for our schools as well, getting to know the teachers, getting to know how the school runs looking at their sports programs, looking at their social programs, all the things that would be important to you as a parent, but also talking to your children about what's important to them as well is it's a great opportunity for families to get together and communicate about expectations and what's important to them individually.
Yeah. So one of the things, what happens when a child does go into high school, the whole system is very different. They're moving around the school. They've got several teachers instead of one teacher. They've got different peer groups. The school might be very big. You've got some real big kids as well, and some kids that are just kids, and it can be quite intimidating for these young people to go into. So what are some of the things that you can consider there from a parent perspective?
Yeah. I think the important thing is to realise that these are all really normal things that will potentially trigger some anxiety in the parent as well. And for the parent not to be afraid to ask the questions of the school. The school are very well prepared for these transitions. It's what they do. And they completely understand that parents are going to have some anxiety around that as well. They really look at setting up that first year, and they can communicate that effectively to parents around how they support children to develop the skills that they need to navigate the high school system. And usually the first year of high school is really about kind of building up those skills within their kids. I think kind of the parents communicating with the school goes a long way in helping that parent with their own anxieties around that as well.
Absolutely. And being involved in that situation too, and that transition helps the connection, I suppose, with the child and the parent to work together with this transition, because it can be quite challenging and it can be quite anxious, anxiety driven for a parent to see their child being a bit worried or a bit scared about the big things that are happening at big school. So when a young person starts high school, parents and caregivers quite often can feel a bit disconnected, because it's a little bit different, isn't it, from primary school. It's a real warm kind of feeling. They're dropping them, they're having conversations with other parents at the gate, where it's a bit of a drop off and run when you go to high school. And also it changes that sort of connection and the relationship between the child and parents sometimes too. Sometimes the child is getting to that point where, what, Mum, I don't really want you to kiss me goodbye at the gate. Yeah. So what can we talk about in that kind of sense?
I think, like most things, I think it's around the balance of that. Looking at in terms of what, as a parent, I need to feel connected and that I understand what's going on in my kid's school, what's going on in my kid's life. And also kind of taking that moment and looking at your child and being, what do they need? What do they need in terms of me respecting their space and supporting their independence at this really important time as well? I think in primary school, it's a lot easier for us to stay connected. In high school, it's something that we actually have to make an effort at doing as well. So it's about figuring out for you individually what you need from that. Do I need to go in and be a part of the PNC? Do I need to look at Facebook groups? There are different ways that we can communicate these days, and there's a lot of stuff online as well in terms of social media within school communities and how you can feel a part of that community as well. Talk to your child. That's a really big thing as well. Talking to our kids and talking to them around how we feel and what they might think about how we feel. Don't be shy about kind of saying that stuff to them as well. We don't tend to have real direct conversations as much as we should about how we as parents are feeling. and actually saying, I want to feel more involved, but I also want to respect your space as well. And how do we find a way that we can do that together?
If a child is really being challenged with this transition and they're quite socially isolating, or they're just not enjoying the transition, what are some of the things that a parent can consider?
The first thing to always consider is how you have that conversation with our kids. A lot of assumptions are made by things that we see changes happening, and we make assumptions based on that. We don't tend to have those really direct conversations in that I'm not sure what's going on, so the best thing I can do is ask, what do you need? And it can be really scary when we see these changes in our kids. It's also understanding that this time period in a young person's life as well is adolescence. And during adolescence, it's really important to understand that a massive component of adolescence is we're going to revolve around children wanting to get that independence and wanting to get that distance from their parents as well. So while we as parents are definitely going to react to kids and our kids kind of putting up some boundaries and barriers around that as well, it's a really normal and it's a really important part of maturity in our kids growing up. Our role as parents is to raise independent, kind adults. Right? That is the end goal. The end goal is to kind of look at our young adults and be like, they're really great people and they're independent and they're strong, and they can do a lot of things for themselves as well. I don't think it ever really changed that we're always going to be there for our kid. It doesn't really matter how old they get as well, but we want them to be able to have the skills and confidence to be able to manage life on their own. And adolescence is where we really give them the tools to do that. So being able to communicate with our kids around what's going on for them. When do you need me to step in? Do you even need me to step in? And it's okay to say, I don't have the answers, but we'll figure it out together. At the end of the day, if that young person wants to kind of try out some things, but they have that knowledge that they can come to you when they need you, then you've done a really good job as a parent.
Absolutely. And I think you're exactly right. You know, I think we can sometimes actually look at this year of that transition year, grade 7, as a practice year. It's about getting used to everything, isn't it? It's about making sure that your child is feeling heard and feeling supported through the process of this transition, and also acknowledging your own feelings and emotions about what's changing for you as a parent, and seeing this young person grow into the independent person that they're going to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thinking about some of the strategies for parents for young people starting high school in that grade 7 year, what are some of the practical things that we can consider?
Yeah. So some simple strategies that we can actually look at would be, how do we help kids learn how to organize their time? How do we kind of look at how they can plan out and structure their assignments, their work, the work that they're supposed to be doing, the expectations within that school? You might also see some changes in how assignments are delivered, the expectations around what is delivered to the school via assignments. You might start looking at criteria sheets. It's all new, right? And that, like you said, that year is really designed as the time where we can learn about this stuff, and the expectations are a little bit lower.
One of the things that I've noticed as well with children of grade 7, there is this instigation of more study. They're actually studying now. They're studying before an exam, where that didn't actually happen
all new
in primary school. So it really has changed, hasn't it? So having those some simple strategies around setting routines and structure, setting boundaries even for virtual times and on-screen times and things like that as well.
It can definitely help just to have that visual aid associated with that, like looking at a planner, looking at when things are due. How do I prepare beforehand so I'm giving myself the time and the space to comfortably do it without stressing the night before an exam or the night before an assignment as well? I think it helps parents to also feel connected when they have a visual over what's expected of their child as well. So as a family, I think it's super important to kind of sit down and map out what's going on for your family, not just the year 7er. So looking at their time, looking at your time, how as a family unit we work, and the benefits of routine and organisation within that family as well. Like we said earlier, this year is a transitional year. It is a year that we do want kids to start building on that independence. And it's a year that we do want kids to start also taking responsibility as well. So it's a really, like, we get asked all the time around how parents will manage that space between the frustration if a child is really pushing against the idea of planning or routine, and the parent wanting to have some control over that as well. I think the best thing to do is we want to maintain really civil conversations and explain that this is a way that will help you. And if we have consequences, if it doesn't work out, then these are consequences that are yours. These are consequences that are the child's consequences from the actions that they have taken, the decisions they've made. And that is promoting that independence as well. We can support and we can provide space for routine and assist them in getting the skills to that. But ultimately, the responsibility of the consequences lie with the child as well. It's always an opportunity to have these conversations though. We want to kind of balance that out and not let it escalate up. When a child has a consequence, we need to and they haven't done so well in an exam or they haven't done so well in an assignment, then it's about breaking that down. What led us to this point, and using that as a moment of reflection within that space as well. And then the next time, you're going to build on that as well. It's really important. It can be incredibly frustrating for a parent. How does a parent then maintain how they're feeling in a space and manage their own feelings of overwhelm when teenagers can be frustrating? It's picking those battles and knowing when to kind of walk away from a conversation, because at some point in time, they stop being beneficial at all. It just becomes about the conflict. And that's really what we want to avoid, is allowing a conversation to get to the point where it's just about the conflict. No one's saying that that's an easy thing to do, and it's something that we all need some help with sometime as well, is to actually maintain our regulation in a space that is incredibly frustrating. And that's why we have services like Parent Line. We get calls all the time from parents that are just feeling that need to step out of a conversation and actually have some help in regulating themselves back down to a space where their capacity is up to deal with frustrating situations. So I think it's a really important thing to remember that while this time has a lot of uncertainty in it, it also has a lot of opportunity in it as well. A lot of exciting things are going to be happening for your child. They're meeting new people, they're experiencing new things, and we want to be a part of that as well. There are a lot of moments that we can find to really connect with our kids, while understanding that it's our job to kind of support their space as well. I think an important thing for parents to remember is that during this period of transition to high school, there are a lot of other transitions that are going on for their child at that point in time. We're talking about a time where puberty hits, so we have a lot of hormonal changes. We're talking about a time where a lot of different developmental things are changing: their sexual development, their social development, cognitive development. A lot is going on at this period of time as well, and it can be confusing and it can be overwhelming. So anytime a parent is really struggling in that space and not really understanding the best way to approach their child, a really good opportunity to give us a call at Parent Line. We can help you kind of have some understanding around what might be going on. And it's really important because that helps them build our capacity to communicate and effectively connect with our kids as well.
Well, it's encouraging those things, isn't it? We want to encourage our kids to have new friendships and develop new relationships. So being a part of that and helping them go through those processes is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And being that kind of parent that opens up the conversation, that maintains those kind of conversations, that has, like when we talked about the routine, making conversations about our day, sharing things with our kids during this time, but just in general as well, does nothing but actually kind of build more positivity and more connection within a relationship as well.
And I think it's sometimes the moments of connection. I think we look as parents, sometimes we focus so strongly on these big times of connection, but sometimes it's just moments. Sometimes it is that parallel conversation in a car on the way to and from school. It's having those connections that's really important.
Yeah, it's enjoying things that you can enjoy together, things that they enjoy. Like watching a movie that they love, having conversations based on that, experiencing things and putting yourself out there as a parent to meet children at their level, and to take an interest in what interests them.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.